there any other questions for Alicia? Okay, Alicia, thank you so much. That was awesome. And Talita, wrap us up. We're excited to hear your lessons learned.
Sounds good. Let's see. Just a second. I do not have a presentation, but I do. How do I stop? How do I go back to regular screen?
Alicia, do you mind stopping sharing, please? Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a point to it. I'll explain, I promise. It wasn't just lack of preparation.
No, you're good. You're good.
So I want to start off by asking you all if you could either write on chat or unmute yourself and tell me where in the world am I on my virtual background? Just guesses. So go ahead, and my chair is not blocking you. Hawaii. I like that, Alex.
Hawaii, I think so too.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
So I have 2 votes for Hawaii. Alex, Christy, any others? The more specific, the best. Fiji. Oh, I love that, Pam. Let's see. Gloria, we could be in the same place. Like our vegetation could be in the same place. Oh, Matt Johns got it. I am in Iguazu Falls. For those of you that know me, I am originally from Brazil. So this is like it's one of the modern 7 wonders, and it's in the south of Brazil, fairly close to where I come from. But the reason I started off with this today is that I want to talk a little bit about engagement and a few strategies on student engagement. And kind of, if there's nothing else you can take away from my short presentation, I want you to remember this. I guess one of my greatest lesson learned in the year of 2020, 2021 has been to capitalize on the first 5 minutes of class. There's something to be gained on trying to establish that connection and warm up and break the ice straight away. So this that I just did right now, it's something simple, but that I've done, and I feel like it's been successful. In the Zoom, I teach communication, I should say. I teach communication. Specifically, I teach intercultural communication and persuasive communication. All my classes are synchronous. In the past, they used to be traditional in person, and now we are in a synchronous Zoom format. But I don't know about you all. So this is something that I always do. We start with where in the world is Miss Pruitt? And I do different Zoom backgrounds every time. So we start off with, I pick a Zoom background ahead of time, and they have to tell me where this is. And, every time is a different one. I will bug everybody, literally almost everyone. I'll put them out of the comfort zone so that they know that they cannot be on the computer doing something else, because they're going to be put on the spot. And they get to pick whether they want to type on chat or if they want to mute themselves. And sometimes, if you are familiar with Poll Everywhere, you can actually do a poll everywhere. They get to pin on the map, and that can be fun too sometimes, but it's not my preferred option, because one of the things that I learned is that capitalized on this first 5 minutes quite often includes seeing their faces. I think one of the things I miss the most from teaching face-to-face is the feedback that we get from a classroom. So by setting the expectation early on, and the fact that they know that I'm going to be bugging them and I'm going to see their faces, and it's kind of a low stakes, kind of not content relate, playful, it gets a little bit of me getting this feedback. So I see some names that I recognize from my Level Up classes, but probably my favorite thing that I've learned this past year, I'm doing the Level Up classes, and the last 3 classes has been this idea of engagement from UDL, from the Universal Design for Learning, because I think it's something that's always been important, but it screams relevance in this context. I don't know about you, but I don't ever remember prior to teaching online struggling with keeping students' interest. Occasionally you have a student that has earpods and is kind of sleeping on the side, but that's much bigger, right? When you're teaching asynchronous, because we're competing with some serious stuff, like students having to juggle babysitting, right? I had the other day a student in a manufacturing job, I kid you not, with their phone, their camera on, and their phone as they are in some kind of assembly line. And I got very anxious, seeing that setting. But it made me come to this real, this realization of how many things they're doing while they're taking our classes, which was never the case when they're in the physical environment of taking our classes, right, in person. And sometimes less serious, but yet competing things, right? They could have Netflix while they're watching our class or other things, right? Oh yes, the students driving, that one drives me nuts, Sarah. I asked them, okay, that's the one situation I do not want your camera on, because I know I don't force them, but I strongly encourage them to keep their camera on. But if they're driving, I'm like, okay, turn your camera off. I do not want to be responsible for a car accident. So the two things, so there's a lot of good advice when it comes to student engagement. A lot of it has to do with front loading, as it was mentioned before, with preparation ahead of time. But I wanted to add to that, there's a lot of it that comes from feedback and mixing things up a little bit and seeing what's the vibe, what's the feel of your class at the moment, and being thoroughly prepared that you can change things on the spot, especially in an asynchronous class. So if you prepared a 30 minutes lecture of slides and you start not getting participation, well, I can stop that and change things up. I have a question ready. I have, right? So this is what I've learned. So the two tips I wanted to focus on, one is this maximizing the first 5 minutes of class. I gave one example, but there are so many other examples. I'm sure if I were to open up the question, and feel free to type on chat if you do something like this kind of warm up, icebreaker at the beginning of the class that has been successful for you, please feel free to chat, because in my experience, that has been one of the things that has, quite frankly, helped us build a sense of community during Zoom time. I love the coffee hours idea that you mentioned, Sarah, and some other things. But there's a lot of things that we can do ahead of time, but to make students comfortable to speak up, to participate when you ask the content related questions. A couple of things that I've seen people in my department, oh, I love the idea of showing off their animals for sure. That I've seen other faculty in the communication department do is, for example, to utilize road taking as a form of warm up. So, and I did something similar when we were in person. As we transition going back to in person, I obviously won't be able to do my virtual background anymore. I don't intend on carrying pictures every class period. But I used to have the question of the day. I know Michael Korsak has the question of the day. Sometimes it's content related. So it's a question from the workbook that I will go around rather than asking, reading the list of names and just asking them to say if they're here, asking them a question. For example, in my persuasive communication class, when we're talking about rhetorical appeals, I asked them if they have ever given up a food category like dairy, and what persuaded them to do so. Was it diet? Was it doctor? Was it a friend? Right? So that is a question that they're comfortable responding. And then down the road will lead us to the content that we're going to be presenting on the lecture, but it's engaging enough, right? So lactose intolerance, yes, that's exactly the type. Some people will talk about giving up for Lent and, for dietary restrictions that, came up as, they got older. So taking advantage of those 5 minutes does make a difference in making students comfortable and breaking the ice so that they are more engaged. It almost banks on social capital. We are friends now. We're talking about friendly things. So when you, in your role of teacher, comes in and asks me about that subject that perhaps is not as much of my interest, I will answer that question because we have a different kind of relationship. So that has worked for me quite a bit. And then the second part of what I wanted to share, and I will share my screen a little bit, has more to do with front loading. I will share my screen here, but specifically, let me see. Oops. Should go back here. Specifically, just to post for those of you who remember UDLs, my focus here is on 7.2, optimize relevance, value, and authenticity. So when designing our assignments, to truly create assignments where students will see themselves. I watched a TED Talk a couple of months ago that perhaps some of you have heard about. I just pulled it up so that you can see, but by Alvin Arbey. I don't know if anyone has heard of this TED Talk. He is an educator, and his TED Talk is about how can we motivate young Black boys, fourth graders, to read, because there's an equity gap when it comes to that group, in having an interest in reading for passion and not reading for an assignment. And he has this wonderful TED Talk where he created this nonprofit organization that brings books to barbershops, and books curated by young Black boys and they're of their interests. So he talks about seeing themselves in the books and the literature they read. And that really spoke to me, right? How can we make our assignments authentic where students can see themselves? And that should be the driving force for them to be motivated, be engaged, to want to do those assignments rather than, us just pushing. I just want to super quick share 2 assignments that I do that I feel have been successful in this category. And they are both from my intercultural communication class. So I do realize that depending on what you teach, it might be more challenging to do that. Like I have thought about, how do you do that with calculus, right? I happen to teach a class that has a lot of room for self-expression and for people to learn about themselves. So I feel like it's easier for courses like intercultural communication. But at the very beginning of the semester, in the first week, they learn about something called a cultural iceberg, which a cultural iceberg is this concept by a scholar named Edward Hall that compares cultures to icebergs, right? That just part of a culture is above the surface, but there are several components of culture that are below the surface. So we talked a little bit about that, and then they have the opportunity to, rather than doing a cultural report on a culture that's not of their interest, or maybe that they would have to do deep research on, they get to pick a culture that's part of their identity. So for example, being an immigrant, being a single parent, being a non-traditional student, being Chicano, right? So something that's relevant to them and that they feel they could serve as some kind of ambassadors to the class. So let the class learn about a facet that perhaps they don't have access to. So they get to pick that, and they get to review the content, and they get to talk about 1 to 2 visible, as visible, or not visible components of their culture. They debunk some stereotypes about their culture, and they end up with 1 element to be appreciated about their culture. So I won't share in details because I don't want to, this is a live class, but it's fascinating, and it is really empowering to see how much extra work they put on assignment that's very basic and very simple, but because they get to express, because they get to serve as some kind of ambassador to their culture. So this is at the beginning of the semester. At the end of the semester, they do something called a Dream Trip travel guide. So throughout the semester, we're learning about those different aspects of culture, values, worldviews, nonverbal and verbal behavior, etc. And they get to do research discussion boards on each one of them, their samples, etc. And then towards the end of the semester, they create this travel guide about, they get to call dibs on their dream trip destination right at the beginning of the semester. And they collect all this research and turn into a 4 to 5 minute presentation that they get to pick. And here's another tool for engagement, right? Giving them options, whether they want to present synchronously in our Zoom meeting or whether they want to create a video for it. And there's a combination of both. But once again, it's something that tends to be engaging because they pick, and there's some samples from previous semesters I won't share. They have to peer reply. But I am always impressed at how much work they put even on the videos, which is something totally outside of what's asked for the class, right? Many of them have to learn technologies such as screen capturing, voiceover videos. Some of them even learn how to create slides, but how dedicated they are because they got to pick the topic and it's something of their interest, like part of the part of the assignments that I give them a $2,000 budget with the airfare. They can't go over that. So that they have to truly plan this trip while studying other things. So when they see this connection that it's real, it's authentic, and they get to pick, what's in of their interest, I have seen that they're much more likely to be engaged. And that's why I'm kind of short on time. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Talita. That was awesome. And I love how you highlight the first 5 minutes and creating authentic assessments. And I think that that's going to be so powerful when we're teaching more face-to-face classes, especially if students are nervous about returning and it's their first, 5 minutes back on campus in the fall, supporting them. And that would be really powerful. We have 2 minutes, 1 minute. It just turned to 1 minute. Does anybody have a 30-second question or any last questions for Talita? All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming to the last faculty forum of this school year, and I will see you all for more faculty forums in the fall. We'll reimagine what that'll look like. But thank you all so much for your time presenting today and to our fabulous presenters, and rest up.